What if one of the most terrifying wars ever described in the Bible has not happened yet? Not in ancient times, not in the Middle Ages, not even in the wars of the modern world. Ancient prophets described a conflict so massive that it would involve nations from the far north, armies beyond counting, and a mysterious leader known only by a single name: Gog, and the land he rules, Magog. But here is the strange part. The Bible describes this war in shocking detail, yet it never clearly tells us when it will happen. For centuries, scholars have debated the meaning of this prophecy. Some believe it already happened long ago. Others believe it is symbolic. But many believe something far more unsettling: that the war of Gog and Magog is still waiting somewhere in the future. And if that is true, then words written thousands of years ago may be describing events the world has not yet seen. Tonight, we explore one of the most mysterious prophecies ever recorded, because when you look closely at the text, the questions only become stranger. The story begins in the Book of Ezekiel, a prophet writing during a time of exile and uncertainty. Jerusalem had fallen. Empires were rising and collapsing across the ancient world. And in the middle of that chaos, Ezekiel records a vision unlike anything else in the Bible: a massive coalition of nations, gathering for war, led by a ruler called Gog. The text begins with a command: "Son of man, set your face against Gog of the land of Magog." And immediately the mystery begins, because the Bible never clearly explains who Gog is. Is it a king, a title, a symbolic name for a future ruler, or something else entirely? Even ancient interpreters struggled to understand it. But the prophecy continues, and the details grow even stranger. According to Ezekiel, Gog does not come alone. Several nations join the alliance: Persia, Cush, Put, Gomer, and the house of Togarmah from the far north. Some of these names can be connected to regions known in the ancient world. Others remain uncertain. But the picture is clear. This is not a local conflict. It is a coalition. Multiple nations, multiple regions, gathering under one leader. And Ezekiel describes the army using a chilling image. They advance like a storm, a cloud covering the land. But the prophecy reveals another detail that has puzzled readers for centuries, because the target of this invasion is described very carefully: a land restored from war, a land of unwalled villages, a land where people live in apparent peace. Only then does Gog decide to attack. The prophecy even describes the moment the decision is made. Ezekiel writes that Gog will say within himself, "I will go up against a land of unwalled villages. I will attack a peaceful people." The motive seems simple: opportunity, plunder, power, a land that appears undefended. But the prophecy suggests something deeper is happening. Because Gog is not entirely acting on his own, the text says something remarkable: that God places hooks in Gog's jaws, guiding the armies forward. It is a strange image: a ruler who believes he is acting freely, while unknowingly moving toward a moment already written. As the armies advance, the language becomes increasingly dramatic. Ezekiel describes an army covering the land like a storm: thousands upon thousands of soldiers, weapons, horses, shields, spears, a massive mobilization, the kind of force that ancient readers could only imagine with dread. Yet the prophecy makes one thing clear: this invasion will not end the way Gog expects. Because the moment the armies arrive, something extraordinary happens. According to Ezekiel, the invasion triggers a response unlike any battle described in Scripture. The earth itself begins to shake. A great earthquake. Mountains collapsing, cliffs falling, walls crashing to the ground. Panic spreads through the invading armies. Confusion takes over the battlefield. The prophecy says soldiers begin turning their swords against one another. Chaos. Total chaos. And then the sky itself becomes part of the battle. Ezekiel describes hailstones, fire, brimstone, falling from above, a devastating event that overwhelms the invading forces. The language echoes other moments in the Bible when the natural world itself seems to respond to divine intervention. When the destruction is finally over, the prophecy gives a staggering detail. The aftermath lasts months. 7 months, according to the text, just to bury the dead. And the weapons left behind are burned for 7 years. It is an image almost impossible to picture. A war so massive that its aftermath lasts nearly a decade. But the story of Gog and Magog does not end in Ezekiel. Centuries later, the names appear again, this time in the Book of Revelation. Near the end of the New Testament, there, Gog and Magog appear once more in connection with a final rebellion, an uprising after a long period of peace. Again, the imagery is enormous. Armies gathered from the 4 corners of the earth, numbers beyond counting. But the ending is sudden. Fire descends from heaven, and the rebellion ends almost instantly. Because of these passages, scholars have proposed different interpretations. Some believe Ezekiel and Revelation describe the same future war. Others believe the names Gog and Magog represent a pattern repeated throughout history, a symbol of chaotic forces rising against order. Still others believe the prophecy points to a final conflict near the end of history itself, a confrontation that reshapes the course of the world. And that idea leaves us with a haunting possibility. That history may still be moving toward moments described thousands of years ago, moments where ancient prophecy and future events seem to overlap. For centuries, people have tried to identify Gog. They have studied maps, compared ancient names with modern regions, searched language and history for clues. Yet the identity of Gog remains uncertain. And perhaps that uncertainty is intentional, because every generation eventually looks at the world around them and asks the same question. Could the events described in these ancient texts happen again? Or have they already happened, in ways history barely remembers? The prophecy of Gog and Magog remains one of the most mysterious passages in the Bible. A story of alliances, of war, of forces gathering from distant lands. But also a reminder of something deeper, that throughout history, civilizations have always looked toward the future with both hope and fear, searching ancient words for clues about what might come next. And perhaps that is why this prophecy continues to fascinate people thousands of years later. Because whether Gog and Magog belong to the past, the future, or something in between, their story reminds us that the world has always lived in the shadow of questions that are still waiting for answers.